Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Clemson Sports Show. This is your co-host, Joseph Hastings. Joined alongside me is Matt Connolly. Matt, how are you doing today, man?
Doing well, Joseph. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a fine Tuesday that we're enjoying as we're recording this podcast, and we've got some important news to talk about today. Obviously, big news on both sides of the ball for the Clemson Tigers. Let's start off on the defensive side of the football, Matt. Tyler Davis, according to head coach Dabble Sweeney, he's going to be out about 7 to 8 weeks, underwent surgery on Tuesday morning. Matt, tell me a little bit about the impact of this loss for Clemson's defense.
Yeah, it's a big impact for sure. He's a guy that's one of the best defensive tackles in the ACC when he's healthy. He started 13 games as a freshman and has just been an impact player ever since. He was banged up some last year, just had some tough luck, and then he misses the opener this year against Georgia. He's out with COVID protocol. So, when he's on the field, he's a monster. I mean, he and Brian Brzee together are maybe the best defensive tackle combo in the country. He can get pressure on the quarterback. He's really good against a run. He plays with just all-out effort all the time. Dabble was saying that he had 5 extra effort plays just this past week against Georgia Tech. So just a really hard competitor, tough guy, played through injury for part of Saturday's game and then told the staff after the game that he felt like his arm was having some issues and they got it checked out in a torn bicep. So really tough break for him, tough break for Clemson. But, they're going to need some guys to step up, and I think they have some guys who can do that.
All right, speaking of guys stepping up, we saw against Georgia, Tyler Davis was out for that game, but Clemson's defense was still able to manage to hold Georgia's offense only to 3 points. Part of that is because of the stellar play of the defensive line. Even though Tyler's a spectacular player and, he's going to be one of the top draft picks at his position whenever he decides to enter the draft, how do you feel like Clemson will be able to make up for the loss of him going forward?
Yeah, I think the defensive line is probably the deepest position for Clemson. You look at Brian Brzee. Obviously, everyone knows about him, former number 1 overall recruit. Rook Aurora and Trey Williams have really stepped in and done a nice job there at defensive tackle when Brzee and Tyler Davis have been out some. And then, just around them, Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, Miles Murphy, Justin Maskell, Justin Foster, all these guys have played a lot of football. They're all back as well. So, I think that they have enough pieces on the defensive line to still have a really good defensive front four. I think that, it's not going to be a huge issue, I don't think, but still definitely when you lose one of the best players on your team, it's obviously going to be a big loss. And like you mentioned, I expected to miss around 2 months or so. So it's not a short-term thing at all. He's going to be out a while and Clemson's going to miss him.
Yep, and Davis is obviously going to be somebody that when he does come back, you'll see that instant impact for Clemson's defense just based on how stellar he is, how elite he is at his position. I want to switch on over now to the offensive side of the football. Lyn-J Dixon, running back for the Clemson Tigers, he's going to be heading to the transfer portal according to Dabble Sweeney. And this was something that, we had a little bit of a buildup to it, Matt. You'll recall when one of your questions asking about Lyn-J Dixon a couple of weeks ago, Dabble said Lyn-J is somebody who needs to grow up. And then you heard Tony Elliott talk about there being a little bit of a disconnect between CJ Spiller and Lyn-J. What does this loss mean for Clemson? Even though we've seen Will Shipley emerge and we know what Kobe Pace can do, what does this loss mean for Clemson?
Yeah, even this past Saturday, Lyn-J and Matt Bockhorst were kind of on the sideline going back and forth a little bit. It's not a surprise at all. I was actually checking with some sources Sunday to try to see if he was in the portal, and he hadn't been, and he officially entered this morning, I believe. So, yeah, it's or Tuesday morning, but it's a big loss. I think that not from a necessarily starting running back standpoint, but he's just a guy that brings depth to the table. He's another really good, powerful running back. You look, he's second in Clemson career in yards per carry, over 6 yards per carry, behind only Travis Etienne, just to give you an idea of kind of the potential that he has. So, I don't think that he was necessarily doing everything that he needed to do this year. There was clearly some disconnect between him and running backs coach CJ Spiller. And so, he's left. He's in the portal now. Speaking of guys, like we talked about with Tyler Davis, people need to step up. I think Michael Dukes is a guy that's going to get some opportunities. A guy that hasn't played a whole lot around here, but, he's a scholarship guy from in-state guy. Not highly recruited, but when he's gotten some opportunities, he's done some decent things. Darren Richter is a guy Dabble's talked about that they really trust, just a veteran, 6-year senior guy who, he knows the offense as well as anyone. He's good in pass protection, solid. You kind of know what you're going to get. He's not going to be a flashy guy and break off a lot of long runs, but he is going to power through and pick up the yards that are there. So I think they have some options. Obviously, Will Shipley and Kobe Pace will be the top two backs, and then after that, kind of see. I didn't mention Phil Moffitt just because the staff really would like to redshirt him. We'll see if they're able to do that or not. I think that it's kind of up in the air right now, and if they have an injury, for sure they won't be able to. But yeah, we'll kind of see how it plays out and just see if Shipley and Pace, for the most part, can get it done.
All right. So speaking of Shipley, Dabble went ahead in Tuesday's press conference and announced that he's going to be the starting running back against NC State. Also said that tight end Davis Allen will be getting the start as well. Will Shipley, he's had 3 rushing touchdowns in the past couple of games, had 88 rushing yards against Georgia Tech. What have you kind of seen from him, in his performances thus far as a true freshman? And also with an offensive line that really hasn't played consistently throughout the course of the season, do you think that what he brings to the table works really well, considering that factor, that the offensive line isn't playing to its standard?
Sure, yeah. I think that he's clearly separated himself from the rest of the backs. And, Tony Elliott was saying in the preseason, if someone separates, we'll all see it, and kind of how we did with Trevor Lawrence when he became the go-to guy at quarterback. And I think we've seen that with Will Shipley. Not to say that Will Shipley is going to be the next Trevor Lawrence as far as generational type of talent or anything like that, but just a guy that I think he's the best option right now. He has really good vision. I think that when you go back and watch the game, I did it like we talked about. I think we did a film review up at ClemsonSports.com where I kind of broke down the game and went back and looked at plays. And Shipley just has a vision that is really, really rare for a freshman. He's just able to get in there, find the hole, pick up yards, and really just, I think is the best option right now at running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, make people miss, has the speed that you're looking for. So I think that, I think that he's just ready to go out and kind of take this job. And the same thing with Davis Allen. Braden Galloway had a really bad drop Saturday, which you can't do if you're an older guy trying to help out your young quarterback. Davis Allen, I think, has been more consistent. He's been a better blocker. So I think both of those moves, not a huge surprise and makes sense, but certainly something I'm looking forward to watching on Saturday.
For sure. And, you talked about your film review for Clemson's game versus Georgia Tech. For those who haven't been able to read it, just tell me a little bit about your main takeaways from what you saw after seeing the film again. And honestly, what could be some positive outlooks for Clemson's offense this season, even though it hasn't really looked that good thus far in these 3 games?
A few things with the film review, and you can sign up for it's $10 for a year. Check out all of our exclusive content, including the film review that we have up right now. But you can just see, first of all, some missed throws. I think we all were asking about not taking many shots downfield Saturday against Georgia Tech, and I know there weren't a lot of opportunities, but when there were some, the receivers were usually able to get open, but just the throws were off. There was a route with Joseph Ngata breaking open over the middle that we broke down on the film review where it's just a ball that sails on them. He had EJ Williams one time on the corner route and missed him, overthrew him on a 3rd down, threw a back shoulder to Joseph Ngata that didn't really give him a chance, hit the defender in the back. So just not a lot of accurate throws down the field. The running game, and I know I'm kind of going negative, not as much positive things to look out for moving forward. But with the running game, the interior struggled some. I think the Matt Bockhorst and Marcus Tate and Will Putnam, that trio kind of struggled some, and Marcus Tate in particular, which you would expect from a true freshman. But I think that group's still kind of a work in progress and just trying to get all of that together. But I think the positives that you see, DJ putting his head down, picking up yards, tough yards. I think that can open up some other things for the offense. Obviously, the way Will Shipley ran is good. Justin Ross getting on the perimeter and making some plays, and also from the slot, obviously, as well. But, they threw him some balls out on the perimeter and made some guys miss and pick up extra yards. So there's certainly some positive. I thought Jordan McFadden played great. Just going back and watching, he really did a nice job at left tackle, but certainly plenty of negatives as well.
Now, Matt, you've been covering Clemson for a while. Can you take me back to a time when you've seen the offense struggle this much, at least in the early part of the season? Is there a season that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, it wasn't this bad, but in 2014, or I'm sorry, 2016. It was a weird year, and Clemson actually went on to win the national title that year. But they played a close game against Troy that year. They were really struggling to run the ball. Deshaun Watson didn't have a great start of the year, so that would probably be the one. I think that Troy game that year was like 29-23. So I mean, they had some close calls that year. It wasn't a great start. Even Trevor Lawrence, his sophomore year against Louisville, he threw a couple of interceptions in the first quarter and really struggled with interceptions a little bit throughout his sophomore year. And I know a lot of people are asking, what's going on, what's happening? Is it time to panic with Trevor? And he obviously ended up turning things around. So there have been some times recently. 2014 is probably the last time it was this bad, and that was when Deshaun Watson was banged up some and unable to play, and they, I believe it was Cole Stout coming in at quarterback, and he kind of had some struggles, and the offense really had a rough year. But it's hard to remember them being this kind of inefficient. And you look at the stats right now: last in the ACC in total offense, last in plays of 10 yards or more, last in plays of 20 yards or more. I mean, it's just not what you're used to seeing with a Clemson offense. So, time to get it turned around, but it's getting about time to really start doing that. You got a tough test this weekend at NC State.
Yeah, and let's actually get to that. We're going to be releasing a game preview later on this week, but let's do a little bit of a preview to the preview, Matt, because Dabble Sweeney talked about it in Tuesday's press conference, said that NC State's a really good team, praised their quarterback, Devin Leary, called him a baller, in terms of what he can do with both his legs and his arm. Do you think NC State is going to be the toughest test that Clemson faces the rest of the season? And if so, why?
I think it's definitely in the conversation. I know Pitt lost this past weekend, but I still think that's going to be a pretty tough game on the road up at Pitt. But yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a tough environment. I mean, just talking with some players, whether it be current or past that have played there, said it's a really tough place to play. It gets pretty loud. The NC State crowd does a good job when it's a close game. Tough stadium to play in. It's a veteran team that's brought back a lot of guys. They've dealt with some injuries too, but still, it's a really good offense, a really good defense. They've been on the road. They're battle tested. They played at Mississippi State and didn't win that game and had some things go against them, but they have played some good competition and been on the road and played a tough team. So I do think it'll be a really good game. You look at the spread. I think it's 10 points, which is the lowest it's been in an ACC game in a while around here. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think the offense is definitely going to have to play better for Clemson to pull out a win, and wouldn't be surprised at all if it's a one-score game late.
Well, what's the one thing the offense needs to do well that you feel like they need to do in order to win this game? Do they need to take more deep shots? Do they need to continue sticking with the run game, maybe getting DJ involved a little bit more? What's the one thing you feel like they need to do to win this game?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the running game. I mean, I think, if you have a team that's lining up and playing a 3-2 or 3-3 defense and dropping 8 into coverage, you've got to be able to establish the run and get them out of that. And so, Clemson too many times Saturday against Georgia Tech was getting 2 or 3 yards a carry when Georgia Tech was in that defense. And you need to be getting 7 or 8 yards a carry to where they're saying, man, we can't keep playing this. They're just crushing this and we have no shot. They're just running right down our throat. So that's the way to get them out of that defense. And then that opens up everything else. When they get out of that, then you're able to take shots downfield. Then you're able to incorporate more play action, use DJ more in the running game. Just you can do all kinds of things if you're just able to establish the run and keep a team from being able to just drop 8 back in coverage. A couple of years ago, and even last year, really, Dabble said that, last year against Virginia Tech, they played a very similar defense, but Clemson averaged much more yards per carry, a couple more yards per carry than they did this past week, and then finished drives. And so, when the game starts getting out of hand, all of a sudden the defenses can't sit back and be conservative. They've got to try to force the issue and try to create a turnover or do something because the game's getting out of hand. So finishing drives for sure, and I think establishing the run are the main 2 things. And then I think the rest of it will take care of itself.
Absolutely, and it's a huge game for Clemson. Obviously, their second ACC game of the season. So, a lot of eyes will be placed on this game, especially with it being a road matchup. And, we're going to continue to bring you all comprehensive coverage leading up to the game, during game day, after the game. Matt, your film reviews are always well received. So can't wait to check out, future editions and installments of it. And before we let you all go, this was a relatively shorter podcast compared to others, but we just want to kind of talk about our main takeaways from Dabble Sweeney's press conference. For me, The main takeaway that I had is that Dabble said that the execution just isn't there, but the effort, the intensity, the commitment is. So the feeling from the coaching staff, just based off of the press conferences that we've heard them have in recent weeks, is that they're going to right the ship. It's just all about getting it done on the field, because it's looking good in practice. They're able to get things done the way they wanted to leading up to the game, just not on those crucial Saturdays. Matt, for you, what were the main takeaways from Dabble's time with the media on Tuesday?
Yeah, I agree with that in some ways, but I also will point out, I think that it was interesting that whether it be Tony Elliott or Dabo or Matt Bockhorst or the rest of the guys that we talked to this week, they all were pretty open that it's a work in progress right now, that it's a unit that doesn't really have a quick fix. I think even Jordan McFadden said, we need time. This is going to take some time. So I don't think that you can really expect them to just all of a sudden kind of flip a switch and they're going to score 40 or 50 against NC State this week. I think it is a unit that's going to take some time to try to kind of gel and come together. I think it's just trying to keep improving little by little, get better. The best kind of teams get better as the year goes along. That's something Clemson's been really good at. And so I think it's just making that gradual improvement and just getting better and better throughout the year. But, I don't think it's a thing where you're just going to all of a sudden 1 week you're just going to start scoring 50 or 60, kind of the way we're accustomed to Clemson doing some against lesser opponents. I do think it's going to take time and be kind of a gradual thing. I know Clemson wants to take another step forward this weekend.
Yeah, they're 8.5 points per game average against FBS opponents this year. Definitely pales in comparison to the 40-plus they averaged last season. So we'll definitely be, as I said before, continuing to provide you all complete comprehensive coverage of the Clemson Tigers. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Clemson Sports, and then also on Twitter at Clemson Sports HQ. Be sure to follow us on those platforms and sign up on ClemsonSports.com if you haven't already. And subscribe to this YouTube channel. We appreciate you all tuning in. And then we're also going to be having that game preview on Friday, as I mentioned before. So for Matt Connolly, I'm Joseph Hastings. Thank you all for listening.